But Mike's advice on betting power hands can help you maximize your profits.
Let's take the ultimate power hand as an example, a pair of aces. Now, a lot of authorities are going to tell you that you want to bet these heavily and eliminate the competition. But you know what? That advice is wrong. You actually want opponents to come in and try to draw out on you.
That means moderate raising and sometimes calling. Mike says when you raise with aces, it's usually to build a bigger pot, not to chase players out. Now let's take a look at probable hands. Mike's calculations say you'll draw these whole cards 5% of the time. They include King-Jack suited, King-Queen mixed, King-10 suited, Ace-9 suited, Ace-Jack mixed, Queen-Jack suited, King-Jack mixed, a pair of 8s, and a pair of 9s. While probable hands are strong, they get decidedly weaker when played in an early position, so be cautious.
We're calling them probable because you're probably going to play them, except in the earliest positions. You will come in if you're in a middle position or a late position with these hands, and they'll be profitable for you. One thing that just drives me crazy is to see players come in early positions with like a queen of diamonds and a jack of clubs. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, hey, that's a pretty big hand. How often do you get both cards as high as a jack? You have to understand that hands have value depending on their position. And in Hold'em, there are very few hands that have maximum value and are always profitable. These are what we're calling the power hands.
And the Queen-Jack unsuited, since it is not even in the probable hands, is not an historically profitable hand. The next group of hands we'll look at are possible hands. They are called possible because they are a marginal play at best. These hands will need a lot of help from the flop and skillful betting to be profitable. Mike's calculation shows 73 different hands in this category, from Ace-8 suited to Ace-6 suited, and all pairs from 2 7s to 2 4s. Possible hands are divided into 2 subcategories, survivable and speculative. Survivable hands usually have at least one high card, like Ace-4 unsuited, and they play better against 1 or 2 opponents.
Remember, when you have one of these survivable possible hands, you want to be first into the pot, or you want to be in one of the blinds calling. Certainly, if somebody in early position comes in, you're not coming in with one of the survivable hands.
Mike also has a category of hole cards called speculative hands that could give you a straight or a flush on the flop, like Ace-6 suited, and these play better against a lot of opponents. Mike's betting strategy? Test the waters, but be prepared to fold.
You'll want to play these speculative hands against a lot of opponents, and you'll try to make a straight or a flush. The object is to get in as cheaply as possible, see the flop, and if it helps you, fine, you're possibly on your way to winning a big pot. But if it doesn't help you, get the heck out of there.
The final category of hands that you don't want to draw, the pathetic hands. As their name suggests, they are losers, but they're not always a total loss. Mike suggests you sometimes play these cards just to establish your poker image.
You're almost always going to throw these hands away. They're just not good enough to make a profit. They're pathetic. What I like to use these for is to go against that advice and to sometimes establish an image by playing these hands. And I just giggle, and either I get lucky and win the pot or lose the pot, and I still giggle. But I know it made an impression on them.
Do you want to start?
Now that you're armed with Mike's opening strategy, you can break into any hand and know you've got the right stuff. But get ready, because here comes the flop, and the game is about to heat up.
There are the 3 cards. Those 3 cards belong to you, but they also belong to everyone. So, now what?
When the flop comes, the ideal situation is to have the best hand possible by combining the 3 cards in the flop with the 2 whole cards in your hand. There are thousands of possible hands you could draw on the flop, so there are no universal rules on how to play your hand.
But there are some powerful, profitable guidelines that will put you on the right track.
Here's a good rule of thumb. If the flop comes and you don't have a hand that's 1 card away from a straight or a flush, or a hand with a pair or better, you should probably fold. Now let's determine what kind of cards you'd like to see come your way. Let's say you're holding a pair of 10s in your hand. When the flop comes, you'd like to see either a third 10 or only 1 card that's higher than a 10.
If you see a flop like this, with 2 cards higher than the 10s, you have to be darn careful about proceeding. What you really want to see is all cards lower than your 10s, or at most 1 card higher. Remember, the more high cards out there, the more likely it is that one of your opponents paired. And if they paired any of those higher cards, they have a pair that beats yours.
When the flop does come, don't fall into this amateur mistake called chasing the pot.
Some people make a terrible mistake in poker. They decide whether or not to play a hand based on how much money they've invested in the pot. You know what? It doesn't matter how much money you've invested in the pot. You have to decide if you want to call based on how much you can win and how much it costs you to attempt to win.
Playing a hand because you've already invested in a pot is like giving your money away. And remember what Mike says, money not spent is as good as money won. If the flop does give you a top pair, then you have to take into consideration the strength of your non-paired card, called the kicker. For instance, let's say you draw an ace-jack in the hole. Which of these flops would you rather see? While you might say the ace-4-3 because it will give you a pair of aces, you should think again.
You see, you'll want to have the jack-4-3, not the ace-4-3, because the ace-4-3 means another player might have a pair of aces with a higher kicker and beat you. With the jack-4-3, you have the top pair on the board, plus you have an ace kicker. It's better. Think about that.
If you have a strong hand after the flop, this may be the time to try one of Mike's ultimate money grabbers. It's called the trap, and here's how it works.
What it means is that instead of betting your strong hand right out, you let your opponents bet, or you check to your opponents and make them think you don't have a strong hand. In any case, the deception works in your favor. Ideally, you let your opponent do the betting, and they hang themselves. That's the trap.
If you've been playing poker long enough, you're bound to run into this guy.
Raise it up.
He's called the poker bully.
Come on in, the water's fine.
What's a bully? A bully is that guy across the table who keeps betting and raising no matter what. He has your head spinning because you just don't know what to do.
But Mike's got a surefire way to humble the bully.
You see, against a poker bully, you call more often so that you can defend against weak hands and bluffs that they're throwing at you. And you bet less often because there's less value in your moderate hands that you would normally bet for value against other opponents. The reason they have less value is you're likely to get raised, and then you don't know where you stand. Poker bullies do take advantage of their situation and get maximum value out of the times they do have strong hands, and that often means that your medium hands cannot be played as aggressively. So against a poker bully, simply bet less often, call more often, you'll have them.
You can learn a valuable lesson from the bully. Mike says projecting the right image can directly add to the profits in your pocket.
You don't want to be mean, and you don't want your opponents to think that you're criticizing their play. You know what? The worst thing you can do is make your opponents think that you're analyzing them carefully. then they're not going to play weak hands. And where does your profit come? It comes from your opponents playing weak hands.